talk about everything Prop 122 brought us when the people of Colorado decided to vote in and decriminalize a whole new class of medicines. And I'm here with Dr. Ryan Shaman Rahman this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Donnie.
Thanks for coming on down.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Dr. Rahman, you have a practice here in town. You're a board certified physician, and you have a family practice called Desert River Family Medicine.
That's correct. Yeah. So Desert River Family Medicine or Desert River Direct, we can have two sides of the practice, which I can kind of get into here. But basically, the majority of my practice is what's called a direct primary care. So a little bit different system than your traditional mainstream medicine. Again, can kind of get into why I do that. But yes, to my background, again, I graduated from Tulane School of Medicine in 2012, was an Air Force physician in primary care for 4 years in the Air Force. As an Air Force scholarship program that I took, and then came out, was a teaching physician at an academic program in Memphis, Tennessee, which was based in actually training, family medicine doctors in a period called residency, which is essentially your post-medical school training. So taught at that program for about 5.5 years, and then about 3 years ago in 21 decided to move out here and become a member of this thriving community here in Canyon City in Fremont County.
Nice. Well, we're glad you came here with that wealth of experience that you have.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
And what I wanted to touch right out of the gate is your direct primary care model that you brought with you and created over here in Canyon City.
Yeah. So I won't take a lot of the credit for creating the model. It's been around for a little over a decade, 15 years. I don't actually know who might be responsible for kind of creating that model outright, but really has caught a lot of traction, I would say, over the last several years as many insurance programs have continued to cut benefits and raise costs to their members and make that product somewhat inaccessible for many people. So direct refers to you have a direct relationship with your physician. You directly pay your physician for your labs, your medications, your radiology studies. We butt out the middleman known as insurance and have a true doctor-physician or doctor-patient relationship. So that is really one of the things that that really allows to preserve that relationship between the doctor and patient, for us to actually decide what's right to do for people, and then to have a fair, transparent cost, which I would say is sort of unheard of in the insurance world as far as what your care may cost. So essentially, that's a subscription fee to be a member of our clinic. And then additional fees are based on things like labs, radiology, and medications, all of which are sold at true market cost rather than the insane markups that insurance companies and sometimes other facilities will do.
That's a great way to put it, insane costs. Yeah, it's nice to get that under control for all of us. And then we were talking earlier how that model allows you to have an entirely different approach on the whole care of a person.
Yeah, so as a primary care doctor, as a family medicine physician, I think we are all sort of from a even training standpoint, really to give that whole human care. And then you get into the kind of practical aspect of medicine, trying to actually do that for folks. And you realize that, every practice is subject to the rules of insurance in order to stay funded, essentially, because that is their payor, right? So I kind of remind people that that those who pay for your care ultimately get to control your care. And so, again, to get insurance billing, right, you have to come in for a medical problem, an ICD-10 code, a codable, billable diagnosis. And then furthermore, through those guidelines, physicians can accrue kind of points in these systems by ordering labs, ordering tests, sending you to consultants, interpreting studies, right? These are ways that physicians can sort of justify to the insurance company to pay them. That's all gone in my model. So basically, if you want to come in and talk about diet and exercise and maybe don't even have a current medical problem, you just want to get some labs based on, hey, I just am curious, what's my testosterone level? What's this and that, right? There's a fair, transparent cost to that. I don't have to worry about, oh, well, you don't have the right symptoms to order these labs. And so I can't even get basic health information on you. Which, you know, a lot of people will say, well, that's very costly. You know, why would you be ordering these large lab panels on people and running up the cost of health, health insurance premiums and this and that? And really, my answer to that is I contract directly with a major lab vendor like LabCorp, and I order huge panels of labs on people, and it's very hard to even hit $100 on their blood work. So, you know, for all of us, to be sold this myth that it costs hundreds of dollars to get these labs and it's way too expensive. And then to see, again, that it was very easy for me to obtain this kind of contract and offer people basic labs at under $50 for most of the time, you know, for their blood work, I think has been eye-opening to me, certainly, and hopefully to my patients. And hopefully what I can do is sort of spread that to the whole county and maybe further.
Yeah, that's eye-opening to hear all the way around. These things are seemingly protected behind this veil of this invisible payer wall.
Sure.
And we have this idea that all these services cost so much,
Right.
because I know we've all been blocked at certain times from getting a certain test.
Sure.
And had to go ahead and call our insurance a dozen times to try and get through some of these blockades that are put up for us. So you're saying with this direct payer model, and we're taking the responsibility back on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And dealing directly with you and your office, it takes most of that away then.
Right. Because I think my issue from the physician side was feeling like I don't have a problem with people getting this information, right, or getting these tests done necessarily. But the problem is that the insurance is, well, let me kind of step back, right? So what is insurance to begin with, right? So when we talk about insurance programs, these were supposed to be programs that sort of ensure that in a moment of sort of catastrophe, emergency, high cost kind of event, that you are protected, right? That you've sort of spread that cost over time, and now you can pull from that pool, right? Insurance is largely kind of a pooled risk sharing, cost sharing product, right? So then you apply that to, you know, people's health, right? Then again, is that what people want? Is that I am trying to save as much money as I can on your healthcare? Or would you like that I'm actually doing as thorough a job as I can do, right? And I think, again, everybody has a personal decision there to make. I'm not saying that everyone's required to have extensive lab draws and all of this. And if the insurance model fits for you, then stay in that model. But what it doesn't allow is those folks that want some more out of their healthcare. They want these deeper assessments. They want to know how to use diet and lifestyle. Maybe they want to do some follow-up labs, right? So, oh, you know, you're just allowed one vitamin D this year. We can't check that again. And if you do, here's a $250 bill for a lab that's $13. Things like that. So you can't even say, okay, I have high cholesterol. I want to check it a couple times this year, see if diet and lifestyle is working. Not really allowed. You've already had your quota of, cholesterol panels this year. So
Counterintuitive.
It does.
I certainly believe so. So
I'm trying to get healthy, and you're not letting me see if I'm getting healthy.
correct. And again,
It's
so
like what?
and I don't, I want to be clear that is the insurance. That's why I kind of said that first statement, right? This is a cost savings program, insurance, that we've all signed up for, right? So in some ways, that may be the right operation for them, right? They're trying to ensure that people aren't, and I won't even say that there hasn't been bad behavior, right? There have been some, let's say, some very small minority of physicians out there that were just ordering huge panels and, kind of running up bills unnecessarily, let's say, quote unquote, which is how some of these big companies have justified their current policies. But again, I think that my point is that people should have options. I think that's one of the biggest kind of American principles in the marketplace is that we have options, correct? And what I see direct primary care as is a really great option for people that want to be a little more engaged, that want some more information, that want access to their own health information more readily at a through a vehicle that's not like, wait, I have to call people and stay on hold just to see if I can order $5 of blood work or, $100 radiology test. So, again, I think it's really opened the doors for those that are looking for more out of their healthcare. And honestly, these prices in a year, I think I ask for right around $1,000 from my clients for an entire year of care from me. We're talking about, $50 to $100 of labs. Those are for, kind of initial assessments, huge lab panels, MRI, X-ray, ultrasound, kind of going down in that order, $250, $150, $50. Okay. No insurance haggling there, as well as medications. Most generic medications I'm selling to people at $5 to $10 per 90-day supply. Now, again, some expensive meds out there that, specialty meds, newer medications that are still brand name. I can't necessarily do that kind of pricing around. But these are prices, whether you have insurance or you don't have insurance, it doesn't matter, right? If you're a part of the direct primary care program, you have access to this kind of marketplace pricing for these products rather than your insurance marketplace pricing.
Those prices sound amazing. And I'd say
Amazing.
you
Very
hit the nail on the head when you said it's kind of an Americanized traditional model to be within this free market realm that it sits in right now. And I think that's a lot of why it's driving the cost down too, because it doesn't have that extra layer of insurance and bureaucracy now that we've put on top of that as well.
Sure.
So to hear those prices is super refreshing. I know people who pay they pay $1,000 plus a month easily. Family of four, you're looking at $2,000 plus for some people on their insurance. So
right, and that doesn't assure you a certain doctor. You may see sort of mid-levels or other providers. Every time you go in, maybe you see someone different, right? This is the price for me. People get a text number. They text my cell phone. I reply to them generally within a few hours. They have an email that's direct to me. Again, nobody else reads those emails, right? So this is a personalized care program where you have a primary care doctor, not a system. Okay. And so I think, again, that's a little bit, especially for a small community like this, where personal relationships, I feel, are, very important, and people have a lot of different connections with each other, right? This really allows that personalized care and in-depth care. So
great model. We're going to take a break and get right back at it. Thanks for the heads up, Tay.
Because I'm looking, I was like checking just to see.
Yeah.
I'm like, I ain't seen nothing. I was trying to be
That's
subtle
gross.
as I could.
You got to hit that button just right. I don't know if I even hit the button this time.
I know that for many servicemen and women, the battle doesn't always end when they come home. Because I too struggle with the
Let's say like
invisible
these-
of service.
These guys dealing drugs, I mean, illegal narcotics, are fentanyl, the fentanyl that kills the people. I'm like, you guy killing your base? I mean, what's a logic behind that? But didn't we come, I don't know if were we talking about that? That seems like
We were.
they wanted to fight the drug war, which they've been losing for forever.
sure.
Through law enforcement. So what do you do? It's you backdoor it and you start poisoning people, and people start dying off, and you stop using drugs. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's the only logical conclusion I can come up with.
Yeah.
Sure.
That makes reasonable.
It sounds more logical than conspiratorial to me.
Well, yeah. But, yeah.
Let's give our veterans.
Here's the, because we always told them either make people start disappearing, like dealers, or you legalize it. You do one or the other. That's the only way you're gonna win this battle.
They chose A.
Yeah, well, they actually found C now, I think. Well, A and B are out the window. Can't make people disappear. We're not gonna legalize it, so we'll just poison them. I don't think that's floated a bit, to be honest with you. So, I don't know.
The war on drugs, I think, is a completely failed experiment. I mean, it's clearly.
Drugs won the war on drugs.
Back in 19,
It won in absolutely the wrong way.
Right?
We were fighting before I started my law enforcement career in '79. We were fighting then.
Well, yeah. So I mean,
It wasn't as prolific as it is
sure,
now, but
sure.
still. Of course, that's a marijuana was bad.
Right? Devil lettuce. The ultimate gateway drug.
Yeah.
87 degrees was our official high yesterday in town. Our overnight low was 65. We measured 3/100ths of an inch of new rainfall overnight.
Yeah, you know, talking to you, there's just small realizations I haven't made about
All right, dude.
how that system works.
Sure.
This is the Recovery Ape Radio Show. I'm the Recovery Ape, Donnie Martinez. This week's show is brought to you again by the Cannabis Shop up on 1412 Elm Avenue. And that's where you can go to get natural medicine, a consultation from Mr. Ken Reef. And he has a whole network of people he can get you hooked up with, such as therapists and doctors. And he shares some common patients with my guest today, Mr. Ryan Rahman, Dr. Ryan Rahman, right?
Yeah.
And we've been talking about the unique model that you put in place to help serve this community,
Right.
and how that has a bunch of advantages over the traditional insurance model that we've been fed here recently, especially over the last decade or so.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the benefits that has, including more personalized care. People can get access to you directly,
Correct.
and huge savings in cost on some of these things, such as labs.
Absolutely.
And with that, it gives you some freedom on how you approach people.
Uh-huh.
And you're able to, instead of just using the models that we have in place for the insurance companies, you're able to see people for generalized overall health care.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that drove me to this model, outside of all this logistical, financial kind of aspect, is that sort of model of care, right? That proactive, preventative care that's based in sort of lifestyle first, right? So my primary medicines for people are: what do you eat? Are you sleeping enough? What is your sleep quality? What is the health of your social relationships? And what's your mental health? Okay. Are you moving enough? Are you getting enough sunlight? Right. So some of these things are the base of that pyramid. And again, a lot of these interventions are, quote, non-billable kind of interventions for insurance, especially, like I said, for those healthy individuals. In insurance, I say that you're lucky if you're sick, right? Then I can actually get some things paid for you, So that's kind of just a disturbing concept if you think about it, right? It really allows me to approach the person to live a healthier life, to prove to them through biochemical markers that their health is improving, maybe to find certain entities like insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, other things like this before they start to manifest as symptoms or become full-blown type 2 diabetes or autoimmune disease or whatever it may become. Right there, our science has come far along enough that we can detect these things many years, maybe a decade earlier than really we're doing for people these days. So that's really kind of one of the deeper reasons why I'm doing this model, is because I really do feel like not only does it allow me to have more hands-on care for those of us that are maybe already dealing with some chronic diseases and already maybe on some medicines, but again, I think this more than any other product really allows those younger, healthy individuals who just are health conscious, but are having a very hard time at getting any kind of real advice or anyone to even spend time with them talking about how to stay healthy, how to become healthier, how to even assess their health with some, again, very tried and true, cheap, methods of measurement, objective measurements, right? Our way we feel is very important. But again, we have modern medicine and science. I am a doctor. I like to get data on people. And I think a lot of people these days want that data themselves, right? And then that's what this is really allowing me to do.
So without the restrictions of having to stay within the billable parameters of everything, you're having conversations with your patients that aren't as common with other practices.
Absolutely. So I would say, again, looking at, especially those kind of lifestyle measures, other quote unquote kind of natural treatments that don't involve prescription medicine, how to use, again, so many different practices in our life, whether it be meditation, sunlight, listening to music, shifting diet, just walking in some of our beautiful trails, right? So that's where I try to focus and try to build this clinic to really facilitate those things for people. So I'll just give you a few examples. Monthly, we host an educational seminar on some sort of health topic, whether that be kind of cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance. We recently hosted a psychedelic roundtable for the community, as well as an upcoming talk on cancer. And then following these talks, I'm starting to add a walk with my patients, right? Okay, so I say go be healthy. Well, that's good to maybe tell you to go walk the trails. Even better, I think, to go out and walk the trail with you. Bring my kids, maybe bring some equipment to help those folks that are less mobile. Meet somewhere like the Riverwalk is our plan currently. So again, this allows me to spend that time and not feel like it's a totally free investment, right? My clients have agreed to pay me at a regular rate in order to keep them healthy. And this is my way to show them that I'm trying to do that in deeper ways than just what's happening in the exam room.
That's unheard of. I've never heard of that
I haven't
before.
either.
The chance to
I'm
go
sitting here
on
like,
a walk with your
is this real?
doctor, right? So it allows you to see some things about your patients you might not normally see in a static clinical environment. You're
Absolutely.
seeing people's gait, their overall attitude, how they carry themselves,
Right.
out in the open, out in nature, picking up on some things you wouldn't pick up on in those 5 to 8 minutes people typically get to see their doctor.
And I think, again, one of my goals with that specifically is also connecting intergenerational folks, right? So how many, I think that's again, community health is what we're talking about here. And if we're talking about community health, I think it's an essential piece of community health that some of our young folks and old folks really interact with one another. There's a lot of value there for both sides, right? It helps our older folks actually be younger. There's good data to suggest just being in the presence of young people actually can move their biomarkers in that way. And then again, so much wisdom and so much knowledge there is there for those folks to pass on to our future generations. So that's something that I think that gets overlooked, and it's certainly one of my goals with some of these events.
That's a great goal. And where can we find your information? You've got a YouTube channel.
I do have a YouTube channel. Everything is kind of at the domain desertrivermed.com. The YouTube channel will be youtube.com at Desert River Med. There's a / there between the .com. So this is all posted on my website, so desertrivermed.com. If you forget anything else, then you can go there. I have links to about everything and all of our information posted there.
And where's your practice located?
My practice currently is on 712 Macon, so kind of just near the new St. Cloud Hotel, so about a block off Main Street there.
Great.
Yep.
That way everybody knows where to find all this good information.
Absolutely.
And then should we take it to another break, Tay? It's
Well, let's
about
do
that time.
Yeah. We'll do that. We'll come back.
Sorry, I got you on your phone there.
No, I was trying to go to his website.
Yeah.
That's all. Hang on. Well, it's always nice when you get on there and look, because you're talking about it. I love interjecting, going, oh yeah, well, you see this on there, because go to the website. That
Yeah.
way
Yeah, thanks for doing that. It's a good idea.
And with the latest from Colorado News Network, it's Dr. Romer.
I gotta give great crap. I'm gonna let him know stuff I'm working over and see if I can have him lose his mind.
I'm doing.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that, this mentality that you're cultivating, overall how to approach patients, I wonder how much of that is completely lost through the system and the mentality of the doctors, and how much they just feel they can't access it themselves as a physician.
I mean, I think it's hard, right? You really, in this journey, right, there's been many times that I've felt sort of out on an island, you know. Now, you know, again, I've made sure to connect with the people doing this locally. So like there's a doctor in Pueblo, John Thomas, that I've really looked to for some mentorship and met with a few times in planning this. Again, there's now, you know, there's a lot of big companies, even startups, there's nonprofits around this sort of thing. So I have some links to that on the website as well. You know, there's some lobby groups for Congress for stuff like this now.
So this is growing.
Correct. Yeah. So it's definitely a growing movement. And I'm excited that that's the case. So,
Nice. I'm excited too.
yeah. Yeah.
The pricing just unreal, and then just the overall approach itself makes more sense.
Sure. Sure.
It's become so sterile and sanitized the way we
Right.
typically.
Or just you know, so cookie cutter, right? I think that's what bothers me, right? Is that, okay, cholesterol this, go take cholesterol medicine, blood pressure this, take blood pressure medicine, you know, but we don't, there's no focus on why do you have high blood pressure? You know, why, you know, like, is there something in your life maybe driving this, right? And that's, you give a physician, you know, again, you bill at a rate where you have to see 15, 20 people a day in order to make the salary you want. Okay. And then what happens? It's not like there's more hours in the day to see these people. Okay, so I have 15 people. I got 8 hours. Now you got what? 15 minutes of my time. How am I supposed to dig into how are you living? How you have why do you have high blood pressure? Mental health, forget about that. Like, I can't hear a sob story from you from 20 minutes. For 20 minutes, there's my whole appointment. Right? And then, okay, and then when's the time left to talk about your treatment? Or, you know, so again, it's a time is treatment, right? This model also allows a lot more time with patients. And time is treatment. That's the bottom line, right? If you don't like anything else about the program, you know, the average physician visit in this country for primary care is, I think, 8 minutes maybe with your physician, maybe 11 or 12, might be a little higher. My standard visit is 45 minutes with you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's comprehensive. Yeah, 8 minutes is the number I picked, even because it feels like that every time you go to the doctor.
And that's the time you get in front of your physician. By the time you get your vitals done, you know, the nurse asks you all the questions, etc. Right? You get, that's half your 15-minute visit right there.
Yeah,
So
no deep dive at all.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that's definitely, if nothing else, like I remind people that the time and access that you're going to get is already worth the price.
You don't mind. I might think you guys get questions, give us a call. You're okay with that?
Yeah, you could open that up. That'd be a great time to open up that.
It's how farmers are growing more with less.
You can actually, I'm on the website now.
A message from Colorado's corn farmers.
Calendar and self-scheduling. That's kind of unique.
Open the barn doors online at farmmedia.net.
Just an overall unique model too.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
This is the Recovery Ape Radio Show. I'm Donnie Martinez, and I'm here with Dr. Ryan Rahman, and we've been talking about his unique approach to healthcare. And Tay, can you open up the lines and see if anybody's got any
Yeah, if
questions?
anybody has a
out there?
call, just 719-275-1400 or welcome.
We encourage you to call in and ask any questions about this unique approach to healthcare that is being presented here today. And again, today's episode is brought to you by the Cannabis Shop on 1412 Elm Street, where you can go up and tap into more resources such as this: doctors, therapists, consultations on recovery type medicines as well. So we've been talking about how your unique approach to overall human wellness and care grants more time to people. You're even accessing walks, giving presentations.
Sure.
And we just sat at a presentation you gave a month and a half or so ago
Right.
on psychedelics and entheogens.
Absolutely.
And you kept using that word entheogens, and it made me want to really deep dive into that.
Sure.
And looking over it, I saw that we tend to use a misnomer for this class of natural medicines that include DMT, mescaline, psilocybin, by saying they're hallucinogens or even psychedelics. And the word entheogen really stands out, and it'd be nice to get more use of that across to people
Sure.
because it gives a whole different connotation on what's going on there.
Sure.
And we have two different sides to this class of medicines in that it helps restructure the brain, and it also gives a mystical experience.
Mhm.
And what I'd like to touch upon first is you put it in a really beautiful way the last time we were on the radio here,
Okay.
what it does for the brain as far as neurogenesis.
Sure.
And you talked about this allegory of snow and ski tracks.
Sure.
And if you would, in talking about DMT and what it does for the brain from a scientific medical perspective,
Right.
can you put that in easy words for everybody again?
Yeah, I'll try my best here. So, I'll kind of list some of my sources here so that people can look at this themselves from the primary researchers. So actually, I can't take full credit for that term. That's something that I've certainly heard in sort of an analogy from Robin Carhart Harris, who's a major big-time researcher in this field out in the UK. With fMRI scans and really sort of doing some of the groundbreaking science around these things. But basically from that research, what we've seen, so let me maybe step back and just talk about mental health real quick, right? So many of our diseases are, again, I don't even necessarily love that word. I think a lot of these things exist in a spectrum. And we have to define kind of the pathology for a variety of reasons in order to develop medicine, develop protocols, patient selection, et cetera. So I think in science, it's necessary to label some things. But again, when I say depression and anxiety, I really believe that many of these things exist on a little more open spectrums. They're not these closed DSM-5. You either meet these criteria or don't, and you have it, you don't. I don't think it's quite that simple. So then let's go to what are these things just from a kind of experiential and brain chemistry standpoint. And I think what we find, again, what these things have in common, why would I say depression, anxiety, or have something in common? What they have in common is rumination, right? And rumination applied to that future sense of worry, panic, etc., right? We would call anxiety. Rumination of the past of I should have, regrets, etc., we would call depression. So that's really what they have in common. And maybe again, even PTSD, OCD, many other things, name diagnoses of this kind. I think if you go back to that theme of rumination, feeling sort of stuck in these thought patterns, right? A broken self story would be another words I might use to kind of describe these states in people. So then you kind of talk about what is maybe special about things like these psychedelic and entheogen kind of experiences, of what they do chemically, right? And that's where this analogy of fresh snowfall comes in, right? So when we talk about rumination, when we talk about those cyclical thought patterns, what you can kind of imagine is that, okay, something bad happened. Now I have this thought of, I'm a failure, right? This is a common kind of theme, or guilt, right? In depression, this is my fault, or somehow speaks badly about me. So that is kind of that you're going down that pathway with those skis, cutting that track into the brain, right? So the brain maybe was a fresh, fluffy snow. You've had this thought, you've cut that neural pathway down. And then, something else happens. This keeps happening in your life, right? And you keep telling yourself that I'm a bad person. This is because of me. And those tracks just get deeper and deeper and deeper. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to exit that kind of thought pattern. Every time something happens now, that becomes your reflex, right? So the analogy of neuroplasticity and what these substances may help us do, right, is that they allow that fresh snow to fall. And those tracks may still be there, right? You maybe can still see them there in the snow, but perhaps you have just another couple inches to make that turn and to pick a new path and say, no, this is just life. I'm not a bad person. That's not why these things happen, right? And I think that's kind of the analogy that you were referring to,
Exactly.
and an analogy of neuroplasticity. So one other caveat I'll put into that is that fresh snowfall doesn't necessarily guarantee you will take that new path, right? So, I just kind of remind people that sometimes these tools are not a means they're not the end, right? They're sort of tool, they're a process, they're something more kind of organic verb kind of doing thing. They're not just you take everybody's always looking for that magic bullet. And I'm quick to point out that none of these things, I don't believe, are necessarily curative on their own. They just really create this environment in the mind and brain where you can actually maybe affect some of these patterns that are, deeply entrenched in that snow.
Yeah, we always say you can't just do the mushrooms. You got to put the work in, right?
Absolutely.
And that's some of what you're talking about in your practice, is getting out there on those walks, getting up, getting moving.
Right.
So people aren't still just cycling those same thoughts.
Connecting to a sense of purpose. That's one thing I didn't necessarily mention that I think is extremely important, is really just that sense of purpose, right? So I think that these substances sometimes can really connect people to that deep sense of what their life is actually about. And again, this doesn't have to be something complicated. This can be your family. This can be whatever, your dog. This can be so many little things in life that have beauty in them, right? That sometimes we can't see because of all the other stuff that's thrown in our face.
But as somebody looking from the outside in, so to speak,
Sure.
they may be thinking they're on the great track, but it's kind of nice to have somebody go, you might want to look at something different because the track you're headed down is not as good as it could be. So I think it's kind of nice to have that second opinion and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think it's not for me to decide what that path may be. But I do think part of my role is to ask the question, are you happy with the path you're on? Yeah. And then kind of more pertaining maybe to the physical side, right? And not that there's really not a line, I don't believe, between physical and mental health, to be clear. I really think we're a unified being, and that we have to use those words to kind of talk about these experiences. And so some of the limitations of language versus experience, right? But anyway, to kind of get back to that, there's biochemical markers too, right? That maybe you don't detect until they're too late. So I would kind of couple that. It's nice to have not just that mental piece, not just that physical piece, right? Let's marry the two and make sure we look at both in concert and how they affect each other.
And speaking of dichotomies like that, one of the things I really wanted to touch upon was Rick Strassman in his great book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, talks about the challenge of science and religion almost setting on two sides of being the con for this class of medicines, even these entheogens.
Sure.
He said science has a hard time, even through all their empirical data, sometimes accepting the woo-woo, if you will, the mystical experience and the value of that.
Sure.
And religion, even though they're mystically based, has a hard time marrying the mystical part with all the empirical data as well. So with that, I wanted to ask, what is your thought on the mystical experience side that people commonly have an experience with on entheogens and psychedelics?
I mean, I think I would bring it back to this connection with, I'll kind of use someone else's term here to, so there's a artist, producer named Rick Rubin. He's produced a ton of music from every single
Beastie
variety.
Boys.
Absolutely.
Run
Red Hot
DMC.
Chili Peppers, Adele, I mean, across the board, right? So anyway, so in his book, he wrote a book recently about how to be an artist. And he talks about a concept of connecting with source, right? And I really like that term because I think when you start to use terms like mystical experience and you start to use some of these terms, right, just if you're not talking to the right person, it may hit them the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think we're all trying to discuss the same thing, this kind of connection to source, mystical experience, peak experiences, there's something about that I think we all sort of understand that have felt that, but we may use different language around it. And I think it's important to really separate kind of that tribal aspect of things. Again, we should try to be a tribe of humanity, not of maybe, in my opinion, again, you asked for my opinion. So rather than to pull from one tradition, I really feel my job is to try to pull from all of the traditions we have available to us, whether they be from thousands of years ago of practice, whether they be kind of the most up-to-date science, right? I think all of those things can have value for people. And so I try to approach it in a way that's, again, maybe personal, right? So if I know that someone has sort of a more spiritual leaning, then maybe I'll use more spiritual terminology with them. If I know someone has more of an objective science kind of leaning, right, I can use some of that kind of language in order to kind of communicate these concepts, right? So I just feel strongly that that separation is for, I don't know, I feel like there's some unity below that, and that's what I'm trying to hit. But I totally see that juxtaposition, and that is something that we all have to figure out in sort of a personal way, I think.
And you have some light personal experience on psychedelics and entheogens, right?
I do.
So you've used this medicine a bit in the past yourself,
Sure.
some time ago, and
Yes.
to great benefit and good experience.
I think so I'd kind of describe it, you sometimes don't know what is possible until you sort of see that happen. So I can describe this in a number of different ways. One might be kind of just the story of something like the iPhone, okay, which many people have in their pocket right now. When that idea first was sort of unveiled, people thought Steve Jobs was crazy. What are you talking about? People aren't going to want a product like that. We already have an MP3 player and a phone. What do you need? So sometimes, there's these moments in humanity where, something was sitting right there in front of us, but nobody really saw it and it just took some sort of little leap for you to get there. And I think that's a nice kind of description for what these things do. It's not revealing something that was a mystery or it's sort of revealing, it's sort of lifting a veil, right? And it's showing you that something was possible. And then you can kind of reach those states, I think, without the substance. I think that's one of my biggest messages also, that while I think that psychedelics and entheogens and pathogens, things of these nature are something that hopefully will continue to really have benefits, and they have had benefits, I think, throughout human history. I think hopefully we're coming to a time where we're allowing people to return to some of the responsible use of these things. But I'm quick to mention that there's like running an ultra marathon, doing transcendental meditation, certain types of breath work, sometimes just, an event, seeing the birth of a child or hiking to the top of a mountain, right? People get these same kind of peak experiences, right? And so we just want to remember that these are one of the tools to reveal these kinds of things in our lives to ourselves, but certainly not exclusive to those substances. there are many other ways, I believe, to reach, again, that connection with source is the way that I kind of think about it.
So we tend to get disconnected from source in this societal structure we've created of just going all the time, 24-hour news cycles, always hearing about politicians and crises. And people start to ruminate, start to cycle. And then they can take a medicine such as this and give them another baseline and
Right.
let them know as the veil lifts, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like when I am connected to source. The last time I was on top of a mountain, when I was with my loved ones, when I was around family, it's a great reference point to get them back. That's a great point to make. And we're going to have to run away for another quick break and then bring it right back. Oh, that was a great stretch. That's awesome information on that. See?
You heard of that book?
Which one?
Way of, was it?
The Rick Rubin one?
Yeah.
No.
What's
I
it
haven't.
called?
He's a really interesting human being.
He really is. And yeah, just amazing career in life that he's had. And I mean, his book's pretty good. I mean, I think I stopped it a little bit. I don't know if I finished the whole thing because I think I got most of the concepts about 3/4 the way through.
Yeah, he set the tone for the music for most of our lives.
Right.
So much of it.
Right. Just, because like what he's regarded as in the music industry is sort of the person that can get the most out of talent, right? And so it's like that's what he's known for.
So he's making some kind of human connection with these people.
Correct.
To draw this out of it.
Right. Right. And so that's basically like, it's not that he's writing the music. It's not that he's got the best sound or anything like that. Or what he does is really show these artists how to connect to what they're trying to actually do and pull some of that. Yeah, there's a theme like in the psychedelic world, as well as like Rick Rubin talks about this, Graham Hancock talks about this in the book Supernatural, right? There's this theme of some of these types of things in our lives, tuning the radio receiver, right? So there's information out there in the world, and the same way that people are tuning into 1400 right now, they hear this information, right? But they turn the dial, then they hear some different information, right? So these types of things like psychedelics, entheogens, meditation, etc., right, are sort of retuning that receiver so that you can receive kind of different frequencies of information. So that's why I kind of like the term psychedelic, because psychedelic means to reveal the mind. Right. So I actually really like that term. Yeah, that kind of tuning the receiver concepts. Interesting one.
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
This is the Recovery Ape Radio Show, and I'm the Recovery Ape, Donnie Martinez. This week's show brought to you again by the Cannabis Shop, 1412 Elm Street. And I am here with Dr. Ryan Rahman, and we've been talking about his unique model and approach to whole human care and how psychedelics and entheogens might fit into that. And you were just explaining on the break a concept of tuning in the receiver and how sometimes we have some of these frequencies blocked on what's going on around us.
Sure.
And you touched earlier about getting in these cycles. We get into these cycles as human beings of ruminating on the wrong things, and how these entheogens such as mushrooms and DMT and mescaline might be able to retune the receiver for some people.
Absolutely. So again, this is a concept that at least personally, I know that Graham Hancock in his book Supernatural, visionary, as well as the Rick Rubin book I was just talking about, both kind of talk about in different ways, right? That there's all this information out there in the world that sometimes we just don't have complete access to because of our state of mind. And that these practices, some of these substances, right, what they do is kind of retune that receiver so then we can receive that information that's out there. There's kind of an interesting concept in kind of East versus Western art, right? And this might be a nice illustration of this. So generally, Western artists believe that the artist's job is to create a scene, right? That you have this blank canvas and you get to paint this beautiful scene or person or whatever it is that might be there, right? The Eastern concept of art is actually that blank canvas already has the art there, right? Your job as the artist, right, actually is to reveal that to the rest of us, right? So a sculptor might be a kind of good example, right? That block of stone, that's already got something there in there, right? Your job as the artist is to discover what it is that block of stone actually needs to be revealed as, right? So this just this different concept, different idea of this East versus West kind of model of art, I think illustrates this point of, again, we don't know, right? Is a lot of science is pointing to that, again, we're just a algorithmic biological process, right? That maybe we don't even have free will, right? And so how do we then create a meaningful life and move forward in society, that juxtaposition of Western science, reductionist science, right? And sort of our experience that we were referring to before, or sort of mystical experience, religion, however you want to kind of say that. I think this is all around the same theme. And I think that's a really beautiful concept to kind of think about this in that way, that maybe these types of practices, these substances, what they're actually doing is revealing a truth that exists in the world to us. It's not that, again, that this concept of, oh, I have to go and discover something, or I have to create, right? No, the creation is there. We just need to get in tune with that.
I was having a recent conversation with somebody about that concept itself. When people open up their minds through using some of these medicines, there tends to be a period of synchronicity that happens afterwards, and they start noticing some things, and things start lining up really beautiful in people's lives. And we tend to say things like, oh, they manifested, or I manifested. And we think of it, I think wrongly many times, as poof, I made this thing appear, when a lot of the times it's a matter of getting out of our own way. And that's how therapists talk about it. You get in your own way a lot. And
Sure.
These medicines, I believe, allow you to get out of your own way
Mhm.
and allow the beautiful things that were already sitting there before you to become available to you through awareness, through interacting and interfacing with these things.
Or just letting go, right? Coming back to this rumination, right? So then the opposite of rumination might be letting go, which is a really important concept, I think, in mental health especially, but probably in life at large, and a very ancient concept, right? So at least as old as Buddhism and some of that vein of philosophy, maybe again much older than that as well. But again, I think that's a major thing of realizing, oh, this thing that I thought was so important, that I held on to so strongly, just evaporated, right? In these sort of states, it didn't even exist to me anymore, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, I thought whatever, this thing with my kid, or this thing with my husband, or this thing with whoever at work was such a bad whatever. And then I go to this beautiful place, or I, have this experience, and all of a sudden that just doesn't matter as much, right? I mean, that is kind of that process of letting that go. Or you realize that something else was way more important to you, right? And that you were really focusing on something that didn't deserve that kind of attention.
And just accepting the beautiful path set before us already. And I'm glad that your path brought you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Absolutely.
It's been an amazing conversation, and I'd love to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, love to come back sometime.
Thank you for everything, Dr. Rahman.
Yeah.
You have a great week.
Be back next week.
See you next week,
All right.
everybody.
There we go.
So good. Thank you.
Awesome.